Welcome to the village. So today's episode, I have my guest co-host, Pastor Bob, who works at our hospital where I'm a pediatrician. Hi, Pastor. How are you?
Doing fine today. Thank you, Dr. Majid, for having me on with you.
Sure. Thanks so much for being here. You know, we were having this conversation a few weeks ago, and we were doing some vaccines for COVID for some of the children in our practice. Some things you were saying really touched me, and I realized that you had a lot of insight to give. Some of the changes you've noticed just being in our office. Your office is here in our building. You know, you talked to us, to our staff, with the nurses and administration, and a few weeks ago you had noticed that our staff in particular had been overwhelmed, so you wrote something up for us, and it was really encouraging.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the encouragement. That's what we really want to talk about. You said you'd noticed that our team is going the extra mile after mile after mile with the caring and dedicated, and you give God thanks for the work we do and the impact that we have on patients' lives. And you said, please remember your work is not just a job. It truly is a ministry to those in need and to one another. Asking us not to lose sight of that. Sometimes when you are doing so much for so many people and you do lose sight of why, when things become overwhelming or become a stress because there's just so much. And with so much, why then do we tend to become anxious, negative, fearful? You know, with the pandemic, there was so much of these negative emotions.
Yes, there was.
And with other things going on in the world, it's not like we're seeing many great other things. You know, the pandemic is up and down now. There's always war somewhere that we hear about. There's always some news, whether it be local, national, international. And then we can all see clearly there's so much negative impact on us, on our children, on our colleagues. What can you impart for us today?
Well, I thought we should look at what actually happened. I happened to have this coworker had sent this to me. It was done by the Zurich company. The thing that they have found out is after COVID, normally things stabilize, but people really haven't, and especially in healthcare, because of the strain on healthcare, the lack of people, finances. So in healthcare, they found out that there's a very low morale as a rule, hyper stress, general fear. In the normal population, they said over 45% of adults have felt adverse mental effects and adverse effects on their health from the COVID pandemic period. 70% of people felt this was the most stressful period in their entire careers. And so as I thought about that, and I mentioned to you, I noticed that people come into our building, they might be pleasant and happy, but their body language is different. So I started looking at this, and why is that? And there's a couple things about a pandemic, and you probably noticed this also. They say the first phase we go through is the heroic phase. I mean, as soon as something happens, everybody jumps into action, everybody wants to help, everybody is there with a survivor, go-get-em mentality, and you know, all of that stuff. And so we were that way in healthcare. We're going to go to war against this. We don't want people dying by themselves. I mean, we were determined to fight for patients and not let them do this alone. And then they call what they say is the honeymoon phase, and so people are drawing together. They're trying to solve problems at that point. And so they work together and they find solutions, and there's a lot of communication, a lot of sharing of information. And I watched this, and all of this has happened, but then there's the problem is what they call the disillusionment phase. As we went through COVID, people began to change their mentality because now there was delays, there were all these issues, people almost get everyone for themselves mentality. Obstacles increased. I mean, in healthcare, it just never stopped. It's like every single day, rules, restrictions, PPE shortages, staff shortages, so many things, disability, death. It just kept rising and rising. Getting basic care became almost impossible. So we know a lot of people had health issues because they never got the basic care. You know, I'm not a fan of telemed in a lot of cases. I had COVID, very sick, and even though I was been dismissed from the hospital, had been 6 weeks out, my heart doctor and pulmonary doctor would not see me for another month. They did a conference with me on that. But I felt cheated, to be honest. If you're a heart doctor and a lung doctor, what are we going to do over the telephone?
It's so limited, and then you have to look at patient safety, but the patients who are in person, the patients who are in the video, you have to weigh all these pros and cons. It's just not ideal.
I love it for just normal stuff. That's great. I don't have to go to your office.
Yeah, you don't have to get in the,
It's great, but I just felt, and then people didn't do, I mean, we had, we had people who, in my daughter's in Massachusetts, and she has a doctor friend there, and amputations and stuff went way up because diabetics weren't getting treatment, taking care, going. A lot of cancers went too long.
Yeah.
They were not early detected. So all of that built up. And so pretty soon people are like, okay, we got to blame somebody.
Yeah.
Can't just blame COVID. So people begin to get very critical, and then they have what they call, in every case like that, we go through a reconstruction phase. So now people start pulling together, getting things done. They start getting rid of negative emotions and become more positive. So many feel like, though, in America, that phase, we never really got into the reconstruction phase, and they feel like there is a mistrust of government and healthcare systems. They felt like everybody let them down. You got to remember, we didn't know. Everybody was doing the best they could.
Yeah, everybody was doing the best they could with the knowledge they had. With
the information we had at the time. And people were like, well, the rules changed, and they changed back, and they changed this, and even people who were not in that crazy, let me just say, I'm not a conspiracy theorist fan, all right? Reword that. But even people who weren't in that camp, after a while, they got kind of discouraged, and then they said, okay, if you get vaccinated, you won't be a carrier, you won't get sick. I'm a pro-vax person. I think it saves lives, so I want to make that clear. I'm not against vaccination whatsoever. But we found out that people still got it. They didn't get as sick. They didn't end up in the hospital. It did that part, but we were still carriers. And we kind of had this idea that if we get vaccinated, life will be normal. We can take the mask off. And that didn't happen. And then the logistical issues and the supply and demand side. And just as people were starting to get a hold of this, psychologists just said, and then we got hit with the war like you're talking about, but with that is the inflation and all the things that are going on, and so people are just sort of overwhelmed.
And the emotions, people to watch your fellow man struggling and being killed and going through this, and it's heartbreaking. Like, you can't just go about your life knowing, if you're an empathetic person, just ignoring that this is happening somewhere else in the world. Especially parents are thinking, what if that was my child?
Absolutely, and all the refugees. And I'll tell you that the president of Ukraine has really captured people's hearts. He has been out there for his people. He's been up front. He's been brave, courageous, and very compassionate and very caring about the people that he's been entrusted with. I think he really has. So the thing that happened with us also, though, was isolation.
Yeah.
And boy, some people went to extreme isolation.
Yeah.
I can honestly remember I was happy that I worked in healthcare.
Yeah.
I had to go to work.
Yeah. It's
And
somewhere to go.
Yes, it
people
was.
to see.
And I remember, originally they said, hey, this will be over in 4, 5, 6 weeks.
It got old real fast.
It did. And I remember the cartoons going around that said, someone would say, 5 or 6 weeks quarantined with the family. What could go wrong?
Yeah.
And then it became months. So
on and off.
Yes,
too.
and I work a lot with very sick patients and a lot of cancer patients, and my job and their isolation. I mean, some of them did not see their kids or grandkids. They were scared to death to get this disease with the problems they had. And then people lost their jobs. Just everything seemed to go wrong. And then there were more restrictions and closures and travel bans and complications, and you were completely cut off. And then, I don't know, you would be the best one, but not having kids in school. And now they're saying that it was detrimental to their mental health, their emotional health, their academic success for most people. But what was the alternative? You start building all these factors, and the fear factor I'm telling you, the fear factor. I've worked with so many people, they were scared to death, not just of COVID, but of family. I mean, we had people wiping down groceries.
Yeah.
They were scared to approach anybody.
People were quarantining their mail and doing all sorts of
but
things.
they didn't know. People waving at their grandchildren through their windows, standing on their porches, and the kids or the grandkids out in the driveway, out in the yard, because they were scared to death to have any contact. Nobody at Christmas, nobody at Thanksgiving, nobody at any holiday, whatever faith or whatever they were. It was terrible. And then the grief became overwhelming. People were dropped off at emergency rooms, and that's the last their loved ones ever saw them. I mean, they literally died in a hospital. In the beginning, they didn't have any visitation. Later, they tried to let people in at the very end, but it was one person, one family member. It was so sad. The heartbreak of all of that. Funerals were canceled. So now people couldn't grieve the way they used to. And I'm really a fan of giving people an opportunity to grieve. And so the grieving process was taken away from people. Death increased, not just from COVID. Pretty soon, because of a variety of factors, the death rate went up in so many areas, from immune system problems to lack of health care to you name it. So we ended up with what? We had mental health issues. Mental health issues increased tremendously. Obesity. It just, people, I get it.
Yeah, the COVID weight gain, we laugh about it, but
it's
you
true.
know, it is true.
If you weren't working, even just the stress, it's stressful.
It's stressful, yeah, and your stress levels go up, it's harder to lose weight, and then you crave, sugars and other, and then if you don't have a vacation or a family gathering to look forward to, like, well, let me just go to my kitchen. My kitchen is my friend.
Yes, my kitchen is my enemy.
Yeah.
And so anger, people talk about anger, and we see so much of it in people coming into offices, and they're just mad. They're angry. People are so angry, and you try to get your mind around that, and it's amazing. I called a healthcare facility the other day for something, and the girl it took forever on hold. Finally got through. She's so apologetic, and she said, well, the appointment for that particular procedure, she says, I don't want you shocked, but it's going to be way out. And then she started apologizing again, and then I finally said, ma'am, stop apologizing. Thank you for coming to work today.
Absolutely.
Thank you for answering the phone. And she paused, and then she started laughing a little bit. But we see it, that people just so angry because everything's changed, been taken away. They haven't been able to deal with it. There's so much that goes into that. And one of the things, we have a lot of extra violence because of social, economic, and political things. But outside of that, the pandemic, people, they're just angry because nothing's right. And I don't like it either. I went to an eye doctor the other day, and it's a medical facility. You got to put a mask on. You got to wear it the whole time. They want a medical grade mask.
Yeah.
But it's not their fault.
Yeah.
They're not trying to be mean to me. It's an inconvenience, but it's not that big a deal. And you go in and you jump through the hoops and you do whatever because that's the way life is. It's not that person's fault. And so we have to tell ourselves it's not their fault. Don't take it personal. But this anger thing, I think two things that are really important about this that I think were overlooked. And the one thing was the mask. We're told 55% of our communication is body language, at least. The largest portion of that communication is facial. One study has suggested as much as 60% is with our faces. So I found this article from Psychology Today, and it said there's magic in your smile. Research shows that a smile makes us more attractive, more approachable. It lifts our mood, but it also lifts the mood of those around us. In fact, smiling can even lengthen our life. Every time we smile, we throw a feel-good party for our brains because smiling activates neutral messaging within your brain that benefits your health. Smiling activates the rapid release of neuropeptides, is that correct?
Yep. See, you got it.
Okay.
You're picking up things.
They say those are signals to our body that are happy signals. How
I've
that
heard
works
about
exactly.
that too, but yeah, there's so many brain medical, psychological connections that makes complete sense. Read about that too, about how physical touch is healing,
Yep.
hugging and
Yep.
smiling and seeing. It all matters. And yeah, that aromatherapy and smell, that's a huge thing. I mean, when you walk
No, we
into
don't
a
think
room
about it.
and it smells good.
Yep.
It makes such an impact compared to if you go in and it's a bad smell, right? You don't want to stay
Yeah,
in that
that's
room.
true. So there's, in this article from Psychology Today, they're talking about how all this also increases your feel-good endorphins and gives you this sense of well-being and happiness and helps you lift out of depression. It's what they call sensory rewards. Sensory, with SENSORY, sensory rewards. And so you feel rewarded. Your body feels good. You're not exactly sure why, but your body feels good. Your smile is contagious. In fact, you know that saying that if you smile, the world smiles with you?
Yeah.
So they did some studies. This is really interesting. So they showed people different pictures of facial expressions. And they said, now, when you see someone smile, we want you to frown. They can't do it without trying. They literally, because their tests have shown that we automatically smile when someone smiles with us as a rule. If someone smiles at you, you smile a little bit. It's sort of, can't help yourself.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that for a second. When you're walking down and you see somebody smile, and what do you normally do? I mean, it
You don't even
weren't
think about it.
if you smile back, but if you weren't to smile, you must be in a really bad mood if you end up not smiling.
Yep. So this article, these studies said your unconscious response is to smile. And so the same positive things that are taking place in you is now taking place in other people. So we do get a lot from a person's eyes and the tone of their voice. But this article is not anti-mask either. That's not the intention of this.
Yeah.
That was the problem with the mask. We lost that facial communication. Nobody's getting the good endorphins from a smile because they're not seeing
And
smiles.
this is just to highlight the impact
Yes.
that the pandemic
Yes.
had on us. And like you said, it not because of anybody's fault, but this is now what we're dealing with.
So the mask was a big problem. We saw the things where school children drew pictures, asked them to draw somebody's face, and it was always a face with a mask, and all you see is the eyes.
Yeah.
So we don't think about the impact mask had in that aspect, but it did. So the other one was what you mentioned. I'm so glad you mentioned that, is we had a lack of touch.
Mm-hmm.
We've sort of moved in our society away from touching for a variety of reasons, and I don't like it. I'm kind of a huggy, touchy-feely person. When
Yeah.
appropriate.
Right,
You
yeah.
know, not the long hugs or anything like that. Science tells us that humans and primates were designed by God, and then by nature and evolution, we are made to live in groups. We are
Yeah.
community people as a rule.
Yeah.
If you're not, you're the odd exception to the rule. Okay?
Yeah, no man is an island.
Yes, and you're not necessarily odd, you're just exception. Your makeup is different in that matter, but humans and animals, touch convey feelings of warmth and loyalty, love, companionship, trust, recognition, gratitude, affection, the whole 9 yards, right? So I was reading this book, and it's called Your Happy Brain, Why and How to Hug It. It's by Philomena Lawrence and Gilbert Lawrence. It's a great book. I met him in person. He really has a tremendous amount of knowledge in this area. Think about this. I don't know, you're a lot younger than me, but in my day they'd talk about someone scratching their head. They were confused, couldn't figure it out. That's a real head scratcher. The reason for that is the stimuli that we get from touching. So if people rub their head or their hair, play with their hair when they're stressed, because it releases the good endorphins, the different things that are good for you. So we went away, so now we had no touch. The benefits of a person's presence cannot be substituted. Phone calls, texting. I love FaceTime. We have grandkids. They don't live close. Wish we would have had it when my kids were growing. It's not the same. It's not the same as being there.
It's something to hold you over, but it's really not
That's a good way to
the
put
same
it.
thing.
Yeah.
I noticed too, my conversations with my mother, I'll FaceTime with her a few times a week. those conversations aren't even absorbed the same way
No.
as the in-person.
No. So this book, he talks about how touch activates a part of the brain identified as the insula. He says if that is impaired or understimulated, that's a reason a lot of psychiatric disorders, ADHD, memory issues, depression, schizophrenia, a lot of things can be associated with that. But he said he believes, or the new studies he said show, that the number of teenagers suffering from depression is in direct proportion to the amount of time they spend on digital communication.
Oh, yep. There's been many studies on that. That's proven to be a real thing, a real problem. And just as we were, like I talk about this so much, just as we were, trying to address that, the pandemic happens, and then we say, well, back on your screens, everyone. There's nothing we can do now.
It's terrible.
And now
yes.
we're trying to get them off the screen again, and they don't even realize so many things are affected. The sleep, and there's something just with the blue screen and not being out there. There's so many factors to it. It's real, and it really affects everyone very negatively in so many aspects. Not eating dinner as a family because the kid is in the room with the screen or the video game, and it's causing a lot of issues with mood.
Yeah, they talk about this a lot, and that was part of the problem with the pandemic. So one of the things I was thinking of, you remember the former Soviet Union, I think it was like in Bosnia where they had all those problems, and there was all these orphan kids and babies. When they were not held, they had deep, substantial physical and mental health issues because nobody ever held them. They had no touch.
Yeah, that's why they do say when a baby's born, like in our hospital, get them on the mom as soon as possible.
Really?
Yeah, as soon as possible. That's actually going to create a sense of warmth and security for life.
So he talks about in the book how when a child asks to sleep with the parent or the grandparent, now of course they can't do that every night, but sometimes when they ask that, you might not want to reject that. They want that because they're stressed.
Yeah.
And that body contact, all of that. It's interesting you say that. I have wonderful children and grandchildren, and my youngest daughter, she gave us a second grandchild with her and her husband, and it's a little girl, and we visited, and she's got her in this stupid suit, and the hands are covered, everything's covered, and I'm like, sweetheart, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You're well educated, you're
Yeah.
a teacher, you work with special ed students, and now you've moved up, and here you got your kid clothed, head to toe
Yeah.
in the house. She said, well, she's been scratching her face, and she says, I've cut her nails, but she somehow keeps doing
Yeah.
it. And I said, I love you, but when she's with me, can I take them off? So I would take them off,
Yeah.
and then when she would fuss with me, I would just give her a very gentle little body rub.
Yeah.
Her whole body. Just work my way down very softly. So everyone's like, well, it's Dad. She calls me, it was really funny. You gotta love those moments. She calls me up and she says, Dad. She says, I found giving her a body rub calms her down
Yep.
more than anything else
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
So this idea of stimulant. In the book, he talks about we have today what's called sleep divorce. About 25% of couples, because of medical issues or whatever, don't sleep together.
Okay.
He talks about all the touching and sounds that you get when you're sleeping with someone. And he talks what you just mentioned too about families. Families are so separated today.
Yeah.
They're not together. They're not in contact. They're not having that sensory perception. If we have that, this book talks about, man, it boosts everything that's good for you. I mean, touching, hugging, being around people in close unity. Unbelievable. He's a doctor, well-versed, very well credited, and with that. So before COVID, we had some contact, at least with our families, and then all of a sudden even families weren't having contact. We weren't even hugging our loved ones. I think part of the issue, I really think the smile and the lack of contact has been a bigger factor than people. I get all the other things they say that happened and all the things we've talked about, but I really think this thing of facial expressions and human interaction is huge. I just think that's the key to the whole thing, to be honest with you.
as you say that too, this virtual world that we have as a sidebar here, it's like a parallel universe because you know,
I've never heard it put that way, but that's a good point.
Because people are able
That's a good
to
point.
say things they wouldn't have normally said,
Yeah.
which in a good or a bad way. So, you know, you can share with people, we can share ideas. I'm sharing this podcast,
Yeah.
and that's how I learned about a lot of things. But there's also the negative where people are oversharing and over getting into debates and arguments or showing a false side of themselves, like too happy or too sad. And it's kind of false in many ways. So there's always, you know, positive and a negative to these things. There's always something evolving, and there's always a battle that we're struggling with. That also leads to, like, if you're staring at these screens and you're scrolling,
Yes.
you don't sleep, then you're fatigued, and it's a vicious cycle.
It is a vicious cycle. So my view on this, I think if we look at the big picture, what I like to sometimes call the world view, then we can see the forest and the trees. And instead of one or the other, as the sayings go. There's been a lot of things working against us, and of course we're humans, we're very resilient. Some of these things are obvious, some less obvious. And of course COVID and everything has changed the world in which we live. But I found several things. I find if people have a faith, whatever their faith is, being a chaplain, working in a hospital setting, dealing with death, if people have faith, the difference and how they approach things and the way they die, there's a big contrast between people that don't. Not criticizing people who may not have, I'm just saying, people that have faith,
Yeah.
there is something about that regardless of what faith it is.
There's been discussions and studies on that
Yes.
too, people's outlook with faith versus...
Yep. In fact, there's been studies at hospitals because chaplains don't generate money. We don't bring in money in a manner of speaking, but what chaplains bring to hospitals as patients and providers and staff, study after study has shown that the positive effects are incredible. From staff retention to attitudes to work, the work environment, I guess is the word I'm working for the percentage of patient healing, it all goes up when there's chaplains there.
Yeah.
And so the faith factor, I think, is important for those that have it. I think perspective, putting things into perspective, instead of just being angry and mad at the world and disappointed in everything and everybody. You know, if we can put this into perspective, see the big picture, we're all in this together. We really are.
Yeah.
So that person, they're not any happier about the rules or the lack of something, or that the grocery store doesn't have what you want. It's not like that employee went down there and took it off the shelf so you couldn't get it, okay? We're all in the same boat, so we should be pulling together and encouraging one another and trying to help one another. And I think a really big factor is the social thing. If you have good social interactions, not like you were talking about, not electronic, not digital, not technological, but if you have good social interactions with people at work, at home, I think that's very important. So much so. We all need to feel loved and wanted and cared for. You know, whatever little thing we can do makes a big difference in people's lives. It really does. I do a lot of little things, and so with patients is one thing, but in our setting, here and one of our other sections of our facility, most of what I do is staff.
Yeah.
Encouraging staff.
Yeah.
Letters, cards, candy, bring around bottles of water even. Somebody cares that day for them. A kind word, praying with them. Just trying to encourage staff in every possible way that you can. Letting them know that they matter to us, that they matter to God, that they matter to others. Well, I don't know what's going on in people's lives. I mean, they may have problems at home. Work, we need to make work as pleasant as we possibly can. Our interactions with others as pleasant as we possibly can. We need to go out there and smile and be positive. It's not about us, it's about all of us.
You know, it's funny that we're talking about this today because it was ironic because I just got up on the wrong side of the bed and I wanted to have a good day. I tried to do some yoga, and the yoga instructor on YouTube reminded us at the end to have a good intent for the day, be kind to ourselves and be kind to others. So I came in here wanting to do that. I don't know what set me off, but the first couple hours didn't go that way. And I just reminded myself what that lady had said and the fact that I'm talking to you about this today. So I said, if I'm going to lead up to having a good recording with Bob today, I'm going to need to lead up to whatever changed, whatever I was able to wrap my head around it. I don't know if it was the coffee delivery or what happened, but things got better. And I've noticed this too, even prior to pandemic, prior to anything. If you make that initial push to do something or think something positive, it snowballs into positivity and joy.
It
and
does.
If you let the negativity happen, it'll just, one thing will lead to another. A domino effect of unfortunate incidences may follow you for that day.
It does. And we say the wrong thing, we do the wrong thing.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting to hear you say that, Doc, because from what I hear in my perspective and talking to patients in waiting room and people that come to you, your patients love you. And the people that work with you love you.
Yeah, most of them.
Well, probably not every day, all the time for any of us. But apparently, but I think we all have to make a conscious effort.
Yeah.
I think nobody has a good day every day, is perfectly happy every day. But just the fact that we encourage people. So that's one of the things you learn in business, by the way. If you read any of the books on management, affirmation. Affirmation is huge. Mm-hmm. Most organizations undervalue it.
Yeah.
But affirmation, I'm telling you, there is no amount of money you can give an employee that'll make up for affirmation as a rule. Within normal limits.
You gave us a little postcard. There is a rabbit and a unicorn.
Yes.
With the rainbow, and I still have that on my desk, and I just like to look at it.
Yeah. So that letter you were talking about, I noticed somebody had posted it over here. One of the managers posted a copy of it on her door. Mm-hmm. And you don't think about it. You just sat down. I just sat down that day and thought about what was going on here. Wanted to be an encouragement. It meant a lot. Another thing you can do is, so I do cards, and I do all the little, anything I can do. I feel like it's just encourage people. Their life is hard enough. Mm-hmm. Encourage people. We've went through so much stress with COVID and operating systems and stuff. I've been talking with multiple managers, and one of them I said, listen, you have to deal with issues. But in this environment, I'd be very careful. I wouldn't deal with anything I don't have to. People are already stressed, pushed to the limit. I would focus on as many positive things as you possibly can.
Yeah.
Fix what you have to.
Yeah.
But I would be super positive right now.
Yeah, people want to feel appreciated.
Yes.
And it's not that your day will change, not that work you have to do or what you have to deal with, but your mentality will make you feel so much better if you know it's for a reason and there's some sort of appreciation. Not everybody will, but if someone, even if you have someone you go home to tell someone and someone's home telling you, but you're doing this and it's great, or you're doing that. Like I said, it doesn't take away from that work. It makes it more, you have the energy for it.
Yes, you do. So kindness. So I'm at that age, somebody one day asked me a question about something, and I said, look, if you're successful, I'm very happy for you. And if you work hard and honest, make as much money. But I said, I'm really at the age, the only two things that impress me are character and kindness.
Absolutely, yeah.
If you have character and kindness, I'm impressed.
Yeah, I'm impressed and I'm drawn to you.
Yes. I don't know if this has ever happened to you. So one day I'm going down the road, this car did something in front of me. I slammed on my brakes. I did not blow my horn. I did not give him any salutes out the window. Mm-hmm. I didn't yell, and yet they gave me the salutes and yelled at me. And I'm thinking, you were wrong. I didn't even do anything. It was your fault, and I didn't even respond to you. So then I go down to the store, and I'm in this aisle, and this lady was just so rude to me. I mean, she was so rude. And so then I go up to the cash register, and I'm trying to be, trying to be nice. And she was not nice, and she snipped at me for something. So even though I was not wrong, I had done nothing wrong, by the time I got to my car, you feel like there's something wrong with you. As a human being, there's something wrong
Yeah.
with me. And then I tell myself, wait a minute, you didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
You have nothing to be, it's them, that type of thing. But the opposite is when people smile and say hi and encourage you or have a good word for you. You're right, the job is still hard. Life is still difficult. My child is still sick, but I feel better about it.
I feel hopeful, I feel
Yes.
supported.
Yes.
And this other thing that it's gone through my head, but I really feel strongly about it because after 2.5 years, because of the pandemic and other life things, I actually took a vacation in March. And I came back feeling like a different person because I made myself, my nurse told me, you better relax. You better actually relax. So it took me a few days, but I was able to de-stress, not think about too much.
And it's hard not to. This is your heart. I can tell this is your heart. You love what you do. You love the people you help. You live to help these kids.
I do. Thank you. Thank you so much.
No, it shows.
See, this is affirmation from me. It's true, and to get that feedback makes you want to keep doing it more and doing it the best you can. But it takes a toll on you. Stress takes a toll.
It does.
After taking a break, I realized that it's not selfish to take a break. I think everyone thinks it's selfish to take a break for themselves. They don't want to take even that day out to do something for themselves or to relax, but everyone wins when you take a break.
Yeah, they do.
These days where you do something where you relax, whether it's just reading for leisure, take a few hours, or take a whole day, whatever suits you. I like the beach. I like to read. I like to relax that way and get into Zen. I'm a massage person. I need all of that. And some people like to go camping or, they do outdoor sports or whatever. But whatever just gets you out of it, do something you love that makes you feel relaxed.
Absolutely.
You're charging your phone battery. You're putting gas in your car. You're telling everybody else to take a break. You need to take a break and you need to relax.
So you didn't take a vacation for 2.5 years?
I took little trips. I met up with my sister in her house, or I met a friend for the weekend in the city. Kind of active trips or meeting up with people. But I didn't do like an actual, okay, I'm on vacation, I'm here to relax. That type of vacation where you're actually getting out of things. Because when I went to my sister's, I was texting with moms that were texting me, or I was going on the Imaden and doing things. Shut it all down. I'm on vacation. I flew out of the country. Let's put it that way.
This
was the first time.
So that was another problem with the pandemic. So people didn't go places. And then especially those of us that were working, we worked and short staff. So most people that are working were working extra time.
Yeah.
And people didn't take the time off, or your employment was like, we don't have enough help, so they want to limit our time. It's the old saying, self-care is not selfish. You have to care for yourself, and you have to find that time. And you have to recognize. So I talked to a lot of people going through all this. They didn't realize how angry they were or how disappointed or how hurt they were until they began to deal with the feeling. And so that's another aspect, is realizing you have these feelings, but where are they coming from and why? Some of them are not valid and should not be validated. And the ones that are, we need to ask for help. Friends, family, professionals. We have to be enjoying life. Life is too brief. Whatever we're doing in life, we ought to be enjoying it. And we shouldn't go through this unhappiness and stuff all the time. So I encourage people to look at the big picture, be honest with themselves, and identify that problem, and then let's fix that problem. Let's solve it. Let's do something. Let's just keep going on and on and on.
You have to stop. You have to take a breather and think
whatever. But I'm a big proponent of taking time off. It's the old thing. When I was young, I had what in ministry we call the Messiah syndrome, but it's a misname because even Jesus couldn't do everything.
Yeah.
And he had the limitations of his earthly body and our faith. So we need to realize we can't do it all.
Yeah.